Hello. Hello, Mayank sir. Yeah,
Yes, sir. हूँ मैं.
like,
Am I audible?
yeah, you're audible. You're audible.
So, will it be okay if I don't share my screen? तो दो screen share हो जाएंगी. आप ही रखिए, जब मुझे जरूरत पड़ेगी तो मैं कर लूंगा.
हाँ तो आपको जब आपको आप कुछ बनाए have you made something?
No, sir. Not made anything. I have decided to answer queries from the students. There are always a lot of queries when we take classes. So this is actually a great initiative. तो इसमें मैंने तो सोचा है कि उन्हीं की queries को लिख लिख के अगर कुछ important points होंगे तो उस टाइम लिख देंगे.
ठीक है तो एक कुछ कुछ तो प्रेजेंट करना पड़ेगा तो स्टार्ट होता.
Okay, okay, okay.
So we will.
So, sir, I think I
I think
if I am to start.
Hello.
I'll start this. है ना?
Yeah, sir. Right. Hello, sir. Sony Goyal here, sir.
Hi, sir. So hi everybody. Welcome
Hi.
to the session. I hope you are all able to hear us. We are just doing a little back channel discussion. So we are talking about a 9 month strategy for CAT. What should you do? How should you prepare, etc. And I'll just share the screen with you to start off this thing. And with me, we've got Sony Goyal sir and we've got Mayank sir both in the session. Mayank Raj Singh. Sony Goyal is an IIM Ahmedabad graduate, and Mayank Raj Singh, and he's been teaching for CAT for around 12, 13 years. And Mayank Raj Singh sir has around 16, 17 years of experience in CAT training and helping people prepare, and not just CAT. He's got a lot of experience and a lot of other exams, even exams like UPSC and banking and all kinds of aptitude exams. He's kind of master of aptitude, so to say, uh, uh, in uh, in terms of what he brings to the table for his students, etc. And so welcome everybody. We have a lot of people in the class. So I'm just sharing my screen now. So as you know, this is the session on strategy for CAT 2021. By the way, Mayank Raj Singh sir is also an IMT Ghaziabad pass out and also multiple time 99 percentile, 99 plus percentilers. I think what 99.5, 99.7 plus, Mayank sir. What do you get nowadays?
Sir, my best has been 99.98 in quant.
Okay, yeah. So that's I love there. Mayank sir is more into quants and DLR as a training part, and he's somebody who actually is very well loved by students, etc. And Sony Goyal sir has also cracked the CAT maybe around 10 times. How many times is it, sir?
Sir, 12 times now.
12 times. And your best percentile?
99.9, sir, something so
Okay.
far. And 99.99 in quant so far.
Okay, that's your best. So of course,
Yeah.
you know about my CAT tracking this thing. I've cracked it 20 times now. And welcome to the session, everybody. So we are starting off with a discussion around what you should be doing in a 9 month structure, strategy, etc. And three of us there. So the first thing I want to talk about is, I mean, I don't believe 9 months is a structure that one should look at. The correct structure to look at when you're talking about CAT prep is not. I mean, 9 months, 12 months उसका कोई मतलब नहीं होता है. मतलब ये होता है कि कितने बार, how many times do you actually sit and study. So for that, I define something called the study session. So your effective timeline is not defined by your number of months that you have. The effective timeline is basically defined in terms of how many study sessions do you have? How many study sessions do you have? And if I define a strong study session as something that you are going to sit for maybe a 2-3 hour concentrated session, so how many of those do you have in a week? Let's think about it that way. Because when you're talking about 9 months, we are talking about approximately 40 weeks. तो 40 वीक्स का वर्क है तुम्हारे पास, 40 वीक्स का टाइम अवेलेबिलिटी है. तो इन अ 40 वीक पीरियड per week, what I've seen is that most people are able to maybe give somewhere between 10 to 20 study sessions in a week. So the timeline perspective that I want to talk about is if you're able to sit down 10 times a week on an average, if you're able to sit down 20 times a week on an average, if you're able to sit 15 times a week on an average, I mean, this would be something that can be achievable for most of you. Although people who are working के लिए थोड़ा difficult हो जाएगा. We are talking about 600 study sessions overall. We're talking about overall 600 study sessions that you are preparing for, or that you are working towards. तो 600 study sessions की बात करते हो, तो 600 study sessions means around 3 hours per session, means a total preparation time of around 1800 hours. Right now I want to hear from people around in this session. Is this approximately what you have time wise? I mean, Mayank sir and Sony sir, what about your experiences? Around 15 बार बैठता हो एक average CAT aspirant हफ्ते में?
It depends here. Like if he can sit for 15 times, I think it is more than enough. It means twice a day almost.
Yeah.
Right. So but 15 times is on a very good side, but minimum 10 times, like we expect the student to sit. In fact, you have mentioned some people who are working. So maybe once a day on the working days, and twice a day or maybe thrice a day on these days. So 15 times is one should have, right, by and large.
Abhinav, this is not 15 hours. This is 15 times a week. So you are sitting for 15 times a week, which means that you are
right.
actually preparing for around 45 hours, for 30 to 45 hours a week. Right. So the first question that people come up with, and that is something that all people want, and since this is more like a panel discussion, not a one-way session from one teacher's side. So the first thing that comes up is, how do I divide my time? And the biggest question that comes is कि daily कितना करो? My perspective to daily is that you don't try to do everything daily. On a weekly basis, there has to be movement on each of the areas. So what I tell students, or मेरा perspective ये है कि every week when you end the week, you have to have some movement in quantitative aptitude. You have to have some movements in data interpretation. You have to have some positive movement towards your objectives in LR as well as in verbal. So how should, I mean, let's say मैं 40 घंटा हर हफ्ते पढ़ रहा हूँ average, तो मेरे को कैसे डिवाइड करना चाहिए इसको? What are your perspectives? Quants, मतलब मेरे हिसाब से when you're doing, I mean, when you're talking about quants, etc., the first phase of preparation, I mean, you have to define a preparation in two parts. Phase one is the preparation which you do before you get into serious mock tests, and phase two is the preparation you do when you are doing your mock test. And typically, अगर तुम लोग अभी start कर रहे हो, you have the awareness right now, and you're starting in in February with your preparation. So your phase 1 should end around June or July. And by June or July, your portion coverage should be complete. That should be the objective. And that means around 20 weeks. So the basic thumb rule has to be around one chapter that you do every week. I mean, some chapters will take more time, some will take less, but you have to maintain an average of around one chapter per week. कोई chapter 3 हफ्ते भी लेगा और कोई chapter 3 दिन में भी हो जाएगा. So वो तुमको define करना पड़ेगा because the depth of different chapters is different. So we'll come to those things when we come to that. Data interpretation में what target should we set? 15-20 sets a week? Because I think मेरे हिसाब से कोई स्टूडेंट अगर यहाँ तक अच्छे से DI प्रिपेयर कर रहा है तो 300 सेट अगर सॉल्व किया हुआ है तो he should be good enough to get into the mocks, and then mocks का प्रिपरेशन अलग होता है और वहां पे भी उसको एक्सपोजर मिलेगा. तो 300 का टारगेट are you okay Mayank sir with that? DI और 300 सेट का टारगेट ऑन LR.
And maybe sir, so total 600 sets maybe a bit on a higher side for these months, right? Because it amounts to like there are three months and 200 sets. It is slightly on a higher.
I'm looking at the 20-week period, sir.
Yeah, 20 weeks period, right, sir? So 30 sets per week total. Right? Yeah. Yeah, this include LOD 1 as well as LOD 2 also, right? So both the levels.
Obviously, जब start करोगे,
but not LOD.
Obviously, not very difficult sets, but obviously, देखो, when we come to DI, we'll talk about the fact that you need to start with easy sets. It's not कि तुम सीधा logical DI पे jump कर सकते हो. Traditional DI से start करना होता है. So those are targets basically. And verbal का target we'll discuss a little bit later because verbal में it does not go that way कि तुमने जितना RC solve किया उतना RC सुधर जाएगा. It's not about so much about solving. It's more about reading and understanding. That's what is more critical there. So
right, sir, right.
So the point then is, I mean, the way I think about it is if we set a target of 15 sets per week in DI, and an average set, on an average, when you're starting off, your skills will be low, but you'll also be doing easier questions. धीरे धीरे जब skill बढ़ेगा और tougher questions पे आओगे, तो maybe on an average 15 to 20 minutes एक set में लगेगा तुमको DI में. And similarly with LR, 15 to 20 sets लगेगा. और एक चीज और बहुत critical है. One more thing all of you should understand. And I hope Sony sir and Mayank sir agree to that point. One more thing I think everybody should understand is that when you do your problem solving in quants, DI and LR, it is not necessary that every question you pick up you will be able to solve. Because if you are that kind of person who can solve every question, तब तो तुमको सिर्फ speed पे काम करना है और कुछ करना ही नहीं है. But what we have seen in a lot of qualifiers is that there's a difference between the number of questions seen and the number of questions solved. So as a student, many times when you are picking up questions, what we see is that there is a lot of heartbreak and heartburn that you have because of these questions which you are not able to solve.
Right.
But you have to accept this fact that there will be questions which you will not be able to solve. और तुम्हारा skill development का journey वही है कि इसको तुमको निकालना है. So when I am talking about 300 sets, I am talking about 300 sets seen. Or by seen I mean let's say DI का अगर बात कर रहा हूँ मैं, because I am reading a chat where somebody is Rohit is saying I am sometimes unable to solve a single data set in a single day. तो वैसा नहीं करना है. Preparation जब करना है ना तो एक जब भी कोई question उठाते हो मेरे हिसाब से I keep that benchmark कि DI का क्वेश्चन अगर उठा रहे हो तो 20 मिनट का टाइम दो. LR का क्वेश्चन उठा रहे हो तो 20 मिनट का टाइम दो. अगर नहीं बन रहा है 20 मिनट में कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा है अगर 20 मिनट बाद ऐसा होता है कि थोड़ा सा दिख रहा है कि अच्छा ये करने से और हो जाएगा तो ऐड कर लो टाइम. बट इफ यू आर नॉट गेटिंग इट इन 20 मिनट्स, कुछ नहीं समझ में आ रहा है कि क्या करना है, या एलआर में 20 मिनट्स में नहीं समझ में आ रहा है, या कौन से क्वेश्चन में इफ यू आर नॉट एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड समथिंग इन 10 मिनट्स इन द क्वेश्चन, तो इट्स वेरी अनलाइकली कि तुमसे उस पॉइंट पे सॉल्व होने वाला है. So you have to understand that that's one of these questions that you have seen but you have not been able to solve. And this is very important in your study sessions, because otherwise what happens is you'll get very frustrated in your solving. Frustration क्या होगा कि क्वेश्चन नंबर 1 से बैठे LOD 2 के किसी चैप्टर के और 3 घंटा बैठे, उसमें क्वेश्चन 2 ने तुम्हारा 40 मिनट ले लिया और फिर क्वेश्चन 5 ने फिर से 40 मिनट ले लिया, और तुम एंड कर रहे हो 3 घंटे का सेशन, तुम्हारा टारगेट था कि 25 तक तो पहुंच जाऊंगा से, और तुम क्वेश्चन 7 पे आए तब तक 3 घंटे खत्म हो गए. एंड देन योर होल preparation goes haywire and you start feeling very demotivated, you don't feel like sitting the next day. तो मेरा थंब रूल ये रहता है कि जब क्वांट्स प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हो तो देखो एक टाइमलाइन होता है, एंड आई थिंक बोथ ऑफ यू सर विल आल्सो एग्री कि अब जैसे मैं अगर सॉल्व कर रहा हूँ क्वांट्स का क्वेश्चन खुद के लिए, तो मुझे पता है कि अगर मेरे से सॉल्व होने वाला है तो 2 से 3 मिनट में सॉल्व होने वाला है, नहीं तो मेरे को कुछ सीख के वापस आना पड़ेगा उसके लिए. तो मैं अगर कोई क्वेश्चन सॉल्व कर रहा हूँ तो if I'm practicing for myself, if I'm not getting in 3 minutes, there's no point मैं उस क्वेश्चन को बैठ के ताकते रहूं सुबह से शाम. तो मेरा 3 मिनट का लिमिट रहेगा अगर मैं किसी क्वेश्चन को देख रहा हूँ कि 3 मिनट में नहीं आ रहा है तो आई नीड टू गो बैक, लर्न समथिंग एंड कम बैक ऑन दिस. तो फॉर अ स्टूडेंट ऑब्वियसली 3 मिनट नहीं रहेगा, लेकिन वो 10 मिनट का तो रह सकता है. 10 मिनट के बाद कितने क्वेश्चन सॉल्व होते हैं तुम्हारे इन अ स्टडी सेशन, इन अ प्रैक्टिस सेशन, कि 10 मिनट तक नहीं बना और 11वें मिनट में बन गया, ऐसा बहुत कम होगा, राइट? या तुम्हारे केस में अगर 11वें मिनट में बहुत बनता है तो तुम 12 मिनट का टाइम लिमिट रख लो, लेकिन एक टाइम लिमिट रखना पड़ेगा कि तुम इस पॉइंट के बाद तुम उस क्वेश्चंस को छोड़ोगे. एंड यू सी यू गाइस आर बिकमिंग मैनेजर्स. सो मैनेजर्स इज अबाउट हाउ यू management is about how you manage your time and your resources with your existing skills to the best possible point of view. So what then happens is, because you are keeping an upper limit of 10 minutes and you can vary it on level of difficulty. in LOD 1 पे अगर तुम 10 minutes का टाइम रखते हो कि एक क्वेश्चन में 10 मिनट्स दूंगा, तो LOD 2 में तुम हो सकता है 12-13 मिनट्स दे दो, या तुम्हारा टाइम फ्रेम 8 मिनट का होगा और 6 मिनट का होगा. ये तुमको कैलिब्रेट करना पड़ेगा. व्हेन यू स्टार्टिंग ऑफ, I tell students that you should calibrate this yourself, कि कितने क्वेश्चन तुम्हारे 8 मिनट के बाद बन रहे हैं. अगर ज्यादा नहीं बन रहे हैं तो 8 मिनट का लिमिट रखो LOD 2 में. उससे क्या होगा, तुम्हारा एवरेज टाइम पर क्वेश्चन सीन will be limited. It'll have some kind of, it'll not get astronomical. अगर तुम 12 और 10 रखते हो, कुछ क्वेश्चन 4 मिनट में भी सॉल्व होंगे, कुछ क्वेश्चन 2 मिनट में भी सॉल्व होंगे, तो तुम्हारा पर क्वेश्चन व्हेन यू आर गोइंग थ्रू सेट ऑफ क्वेश्चंस एंड क्वांट्स, तो पर क्वेश्चन तुम्हारा एवरेज टाइम में भी 6 मिनट्स होगा. तो 1 घंटा बैठोगे तो 10 क्वेश्चन प्रोसेस करोगे तुम. सॉल्व कितने करोगे दैट्स डिफरेंट. हो सकता है तुम 5 ही सॉल्व कर पाए, दैट्स ओके. आई एम ओके विद अ स्टूडेंट हु इज एबल टू टेल मी कि सर मैंने 500 क्वेश्चन नंबर सिस्टम में देख लिए, उसमें से 250 मेरे से बन गए हैं, 250 नहीं बन रहे. तो आई विल टेल हिम कि चलो अब ये काम करना स्टार्ट करो. दैट्स व्हाट माय पर्सपेक्टिव वुड बी. वुड यू लाइक टू ऐड समथिंग, Mayank sir and Sony sir, to this?
Right, sir. Taking it from, you rightly shown the difference between the question seen and question solved. Right. So, student many a times they are worried about the questions which they are not able to solve. And if you will look at the real cat also, you are not supposed to solve each and every question that you see. Right. In fact, if I just talk about this year's cat, out of 26 questions, even if you have just 10 questions right, in quant, on an average across the slots, you can get percentile like 95, 96. Right? So for an average student who says my quant is not so great, even if you are able to solve 10 questions, so you are able to get 95 percentile, which can be a dream percentile for you in your section, which is the weakest section. So the gap between seen and the question that you are solving, so you need to understand when to leave that particular question. Maybe sir will talk about that window time, so that you need to start practicing even from the start of your preparation. So after 10 minutes you're not able to solve it, leave that question, because that is a question which you probably need to upgrade your skill further to really go about and solving this question.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
yeah.
Mayank sir, anything?
Adding to this, yes sir, of course. Adding to what Sony Goyal sir just said, तो जैसे उन्होंने बताया कि 10-11 क्वेश्चन अगर आप कर लेते हो 95-96 percentile आ जाते हैं. I would like to add a little bit to it that in each slot 1, slot 3 especially, more than half of the questions were LOD 1 level. I want to actually encourage you by saying this. आप देखोगे क्वेश्चन स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड सॉल्व हो रहा है, especially in arithmetic.
Yeah, and
Okay,
that's for
so
every
अगर आप देखो,
CAT 20. It's true for every.
yes, CAT 20, absolutely sir, CAT 20 की बात
तो
करें.
मैं CAT
तो
मतलब I'll just interrupt for a second and you take back. बहुत बार तो मैं CAT का भी दिखाता हूँ, लोग बोलते हैं सर ये CAT का क्वेश्चन थोड़ी हो सकता है. I think you guys.
हाँ, so
you have to show
इसी से थोड़ा सा
ये साल का पेपर है, तुम चेक कर लो.
Exactly.
हाँ.
Exactly. तो मेरे से क्लास में भी अक्सर लोग कहते हैं सर ये कैट लेवल क्वेश्चन है, तो मैं उनको वहीं टोकता हूँ. और आज मैं फिर आई एम टेकिंग दिस अपॉर्चुनिटी टू टेल देम दैट देयर इज नो कैट लेवल. व्हाट इज कैट लेवल? नोबडी नोस. शर्मा सर डजंट नो. ही हैज क्रैक्ड कैट लाइक 25 टाइम्स. आई डोंट नो व्हाट इज कैट लेवल. व्हाट इज कैट लेवल? वी डोंट नो दैट. कोई भी कैट लेवल कुछ भी हो सकता है. ऐसा भी क्वेश्चन आता है जो हम 15 साल से पढ़ा रहे हैं और अभी भी नहीं सॉल्व कर पाए, और ऐसा भी क्वेश्चन आ सकता है जो हम आधा देखकर सॉल्व करते हैं. ठीक है, तो कैट का कोई लेवल नहीं है. एक और चीज मैं बोलना चाहता हूँ दैट there is a weird psychology among the students to run after difficult questions. देखिए बहुत हानिकारक हो सकता है आपके लिए अगर आप सिर्फ difficult question के पीछे भागेंगे. Even if you are a great student or you are a struggling student, in either case it is very harmful for you. अगर आप बहुत अच्छे स्टूडेंट है ना, अगर आप LOD 1 लेवल को ऐसे ही झटके में सॉल्व कर देते हैं, तो मैं आपको चैलेंज बताता हूँ, आप कॉपी के पास किनारे रख दो, खाली क्वेश्चन देखकर आंसर करो. आप उसको चैलेंजिंग बनाइए ना, LOD 1 लेवल को अपने लिए चैलेंजिंग बनाइए. सो दैट विल बी अ लेवल अप फॉर यू. ओके, सो ऐसा नहीं है कि ये आसान क्वेश्चन है, ये डिफिकल्ट क्वेश्चन. आप आसान क्वेश्चन में भी चैलेंजिंग बना सकते हैं अपने लिए एंड कैलकुलेट मोर मेंटली, बिकॉज वेरी वेरी इंटरेस्टिंगली हमारा एजुकेशन सिस्टम ऐसा है कि 12th तक तो हमें स्टेप मार्किंग होती है और अचानक 12th के बाद हमसे उम्मीद की जाती है कि हम मेंटली सॉल्व करें, सिंस देयरफॉर के साइन ना लगाएं. तो ये जो गैप है ना, वहीं पर जो है आपकी सारी ट्रेनिंग जो है, it is actually tested.
Yeah.
So this is something that I wanted to say.
Very
Yes.
important. And coming to Sony Goyal's point of the fact that the only एक तो CAT में बहुत आसान questions आते हैं. And I mean, what I feel, if you talk about level of difficulty 1, level of difficulty 2 and level of difficulty 3 questions, तो मेरे बुक के LOD 3 के questions तो almost नहीं आते हैं CAT में. I mean, maybe few chapters like ratio proportion या number system में कुछ कभी-कभी आता है उस level पे. And मेरे बुक के 6 chapters in which I suggest that you should do LOD 3. But what I was trying to point out is that if you break down the CAT papers of the past years, so CAT papers there have been years in which the paper has been very tough. लोग रोते हुए आए कि मैथ्स में तो खून के आंसू पी लिया हमने. Or there have been years where they have been normal, which is what is expected. And then there have been years in which CAT has been very, very easy. CAT 2017,
CAT 2017,
16 लोग बाहर, हाँ 16 लोग बाहर आके हंसते हुए आए कि कौन तो बड़ा आसान था, एक्सेट्रा. तो उसका मतलब यहाँ पे क्या रहता है? I'll just share you. I mean, see, basically there is a population of each kind of question. So अगर इसको LOD 1, 2, 3 का ड्रामेटिक ब्रेकडाउन के बदले हम लोग easy questions and tough questions के बीच में ब्रेक करते हैं, तो a tough CAT paper is 70% here and 30% here. A normal CAT paper will be somewhere 50-50, and an easy CAT paper will be 70-30. 70 questions easy and 30 questions tough. And the other factor is, जैसे CAT 2020 को हम लोग normal paper पे rate करते हैं quants में at least. We rated on a normal paper. It's like a normal CAT paper. CAT 2018 is where this was the case, and CAT 17 was like this. So how it changes your experience in the solving is that in this case, every 3 questions में 2 easy मिल रहा है, और यहाँ पे every 3 questions में 1 easy मिल रहा है. और प्रॉब्लम क्या होता है कि एग्जाम के अंदर तुम अगर गए हो टारगेट 34 क्वेश्चन के टारगेट में तुम अगर गए हो एग्जाम में कि 24 बनाने हैं मेरे को, एग्जाम में पता नहीं चलता है कि तुमको टफ टफ पेपर है, यू डोंट गेट टू नो एंड यू आर नॉट एबल टू डाउनग्रेड दिस टारगेट and in this paper if you're trying to go for 24 questions then it becomes very easy, very difficult to reach 24. यहाँ पे रीचिंग इजी है, ये आराम से तुमको 24 पहुंचाने दे रहा है, तो you have to adjust your this thing based on this thing, but that is again comes a little bit later. The other point I want to talk about, sir, Sony sir was talking about 10 out of 26. So,
right sir.
10 out of 26 under time pressure, under exam pressure. This seems कि मैं 40% क्वेश्चन भी सॉल्व कर लूं तो मेरा हो जाएगा. तो तुम्हारे प्रैक्टिस में I would think in your practice if you can reach a point where 100% questions you see and you are able to solve around 80 to 90% of questions on every chapter and तुमको बाकी 10% क्वेश्चन पता नहीं चले, कभी नहीं पता चले, तो तुम ये 40% स्कोर तो अचीव कर सकते हो आराम से. So your target should not be, I mean, this does not mean कि तुम्हारा target 40% जानना है, तुम्हारा target 80 to 90% जानना है. But what I feel is I mean, I speak, Mayank sir was talking about this in a different words. I speak about it in different words. Ki don't go for the last question. Don't go overboard to know every last question of every chapter. It is fine कि तुमने 500 क्वेश्चन किए नंबर सिस्टम के, तुमसे 470 ही सॉल्व हुए, 30 तुमको कोई आइडिया नहीं है, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, रहने दो. तुमको कैट में जाके सब क्वेश्चन अगर आते हैं तो बहुत ज्यादा पढ़ लिया तुम, राइट. कैट का आइडियल स्ट्रक्चर जो रहता है ना, let's say CAT 2020 is a 34 question exam, so the ideal structure for CAT 2020 is 34 question आए कॉन्ट्स में, तुमको 28 से 30 आते थे, you knew 28 to 30 और तुमने 22 से 24 सॉल्व कर लिए. This is the ideal prep structure for CAT. अगर इस पॉइंट पे आ गए कि 34 क्वेश्चन थे, तुमको 34 आते थे, तो बहुत ज्यादा पढ़ाई कर ली तुमने. तुमको थोड़ा सा अपने प्रोफाइल पे टाइम दे देना चाहिए था, तुमको थोड़ा सा अपने
बबल पे टाइम दे देना चाहिए था सर. डेफिनेटली इस बंदे का बबल अच्छा नहीं होगा.
सो जाते हैं ना, थोड़े
इसके 34 पार्ट आते थे.
थोड़ा देर सो लेते थे, आराम कर लेते थोड़ा सा, है ना. तो इंडिया इंग्लैंड की सीरीज चल रही है, उस पर जाके देख लो, ठीक है, इतना ज्यादा करने की जरूरत नहीं है. तो ब्रॉडली तुमको मतलब व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट ऑब्जेक्टिव, आई मीन जब तुम प्रिपरेशन की बात करते हो तो ऑब्जेक्टिव की बात करते हो. ऑब्जेक्टिव में बात है कि कोई भी चैप्टर में तुम अगर इस पॉइंट पे आ गए कि मेरे को 6 क्वेश्चन दो, मैं 5 कर लूंगा, दैट इज सफिशिएंट. सो दैट्स व्हाट आई सेड, डोंट गो फॉर द 6 क्वेश्चन. 6 में से 6 तुमको परफेक्शन नहीं चाहिए. एंड दिस इज वन थिंग यू नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड. मतलब आई डोंट थिंक मेनी मैथ्स टीचर्स विल टेल यू दिस, बिकॉज़ मैथ्स टीचर्स तो नॉर्मली बेटा तुम लग जाओ मैथ्स के पीछे और तुमको मैथ्स का पीएचडी बन के निकलना है यहाँ से. बट वी आर वेरी क्लियर अबाउट दिस कि ये छठे क्वेश्चन को जानने के लिए तुमको मतलब आई एम गिविंग द स्टेज. मैं सोनी सर, छठे अगर सपोज कोई चैप्टर है, लेट्स से टाइम स्पीड डिस्टेंस है, you start with the point where you can solve 0 to 2 questions out of 6 on that chapter. तुम अगर टाइम स्पीड डिस्टेंस में 30 का आवर्स टाइम दोगे तो तुम शायद, अगर तुम्हारी लर्निंग कैपेसिटी ठीक है तो 30 घंटे में तुम 4 से 5 में पहुंच जाओगे. और यहाँ 5 से 6 में जाने में तुमको पहुंचना है कि तुम हर क्वेश्चन जान लो और हर क्वेश्चन तुम सॉल्व ही कर लो, कितना भी मुश्किल है, which is something that I see happening on Facebook groups etc. these days. तब तो ये भैया ये 30 घंटे को तुम एटलीस्ट 100 घंटे और ऐड कर दो उसमें, अगर तुमको उस चैप्टर में छठे क्वेश्चन पे जाना है. और आई डोंट नो अबाउट यू पीपल, आप लोग तो थोड़ा मैथ्स में मेरे से बेटर हैं, सोनी सर एंड वैंक सर. मेरे को तो मैं जब फेसबुक ग्रुप पे जाता हूँ किसी देखने के लिए कि कैट का क्या तैयारी कैसे होनी चाहिए, तो मेरे को तो सीधा लगता है कि कैट नहीं होने वाला है. मैं 4-5 क्वेश्चन आधा घंटा बिता लूं किसी फेसबुक ग्रुप पे कि क्या क्वेश्चन डिस्कस हो रहा है वहां पे, तो आई क्लियरली लगता है कि इस साल मेरा नहीं होने वाला है. मेरा पूरा कॉन्फिडेंस डिफ्लेट हो जाता है कि बाप रे क्या क्वेश्चन डिस्कस कर रहे हैं, मेरे को तो कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा है.
So I will add to this, sir. there are few people in the maybe I would say in the industry who are creating these questions just to make you feel that your preparation is incomplete. I call these questions as stupid questions. Nobody can ever solve it, and forget about solving it within a given time frame, right? एग्जाम के अंदर तो यार किसी को भी धुरंधर को भी दे दो ना जिससे क्वेश्चन आया उसको बोले कि भाई तू सॉल्व करके बता. Sir, I get many questions where you are using differentiation, you are using the solutions are 1.5 page long. So those questions are made to feel you that your preparation is incomplete, make you feel dissatisfied.
Come to me, I'll
डर का बिजनेस करना है, डर का बिजनेस.
Yeah, डर का business करना है. But if I let me just take one a minute to tell you, you can classify questions in three parts. I would say first is the concept based questions, second we call it as application based, and third we I can say CAT is your typical time consuming question. So forget about these typical time consuming questions, right? As a management exam, if you are just able to take concept based questions plus application based questions, that's it.
Right.
And even if you're not able to solve here, it's okay, it's very much okay. And as Mayank sir has rightly mentioned, if you are able to score beyond a particular level, let us say you are able to want to get 80 percentile in your quant, it's your weakest section, or it may be your second session. So after that you work on the other section where you need to increase. Getting 99.99 in a particular section will not help you that much, right?
Yeah.
So balancing all the sets, like Mayank sir also said that when you are getting very high in one subject, it's time to look at the other subjects also. And usually we see people who are good at verbal, right, they do miserably bad in this quant or DI, and vice versa. So it's always better to understand the purpose of preparation is to master concept and master your applications, right? No need to waste unnecessarily time on the question which we call it as typical question or time consuming question, right sir?
So yeah, so coming back to the objective basically, when you took a look at CAT, your CAT is a 50% exam. If you can score 50% net score, you'll get a 99 percentile. मतलब कहीं नहीं गया तुम्हारा 99 percentile. इस साल तो मतलब 2 घंटे के एग्जाम में तो 50% पे तुम्हारा 99.5 99.6 percentile था. 228 मार्क का पेपर था. You had, if you got 114, you would score 99.6 99.7 maybe easy in the exam.
Right.
Sure. So CAT basically is a exam which is 50% net score exam. So if I'm assuming that CAT 2021 is a 3-hour exam. I'm assuming it's going to be a 3-hour exam. Something happened to my pen, it's not working. So anyway, so if it's a 3-hour exam, so you have to try to think of 300 question exam, 300 marks exam. And why it's most likely going to be 3 hours, because hopefully we are seeing the last of the COVID this thing. Although there's still a danger that it might come back and all. We don't need to be very lax about it. But if we look at the vaccine situation and the fact that cases are now getting more and more under control, except a couple of states in India. So if it's normal by November, I think CAT will go back to a 3-hour exam, because that's their standard. I mean, these exams don't change on the basis of, unless they are really forced to, they don't change their patterns and their structures. So these are very settled exams. Or in exams, ka basic philosophy is that they are very settled and they have got a very straight, simple structure. So what you have to design or what you have to think of is how do I get to 150 marks out of 300. That's what you have to think of, and your strategy has to be built on that. So various strategies to get to 150 marks in a 3-hour exam. I'm talking about the order in which CAT gives you the paper: VRC, DILR, and quants. So various strategies you get to because when you're defining your strategy, you have to know the objectives. Without objective awareness, you can't define strategy. So coming back to this point I was talking about, that you want to get 150. So what is your why is my pen working this way? Okay, what is your strategy for 150? Is it going to be, are you a 70, 30, 50 scorer? Are you somebody who's looking at 40, 40 and 70? Are you somebody who's looking at 30, 50 and 70? Are you somebody who's looking at 75, 40 and 40? क्या क्या तुम्हारा strategy है? तुम्हारा क्या plan है? What are you trying to achieve? You have to try to break this down based of course on your comfort level कि VRC तुम्हारा अच्छा है, कि DILR you are good at, कि quants अच्छा है, कि सब कुछ खराब है. तो सब कुछ खराब है तो पहले तुम्हारा टारगेट होगा कि 30 पहुंचो, ताकि एटलीस्ट 90 तक पहुंचो. Then you are getting a 85-90 percentile, and then you look at how you go from there. So what will happen is when you start off, you have to create that final structure. What is going to be your CAT score? You have to start with that awareness. So for example, a lot of people ask me how I clear the CAT. तो मेरा फॉर्मूला बहुत सिंपल है, 300 नंबर आते हैं आजकल. माय स्कोर इज, आई मीन अभी मेरे को कैट दे दो तो मेरा स्कोर 210 से 230 होगा. बहुत अच्छा पेपर हो जाएगा तो 230 आ जाएगा. इफ द पेपर इज बैड फॉर मी, आई गेट 210. So if my score is in that range, my percentile will be between 99.96 to 99.99. If I get lucky, I might get 100 percentile. Right? I need a little bit of luck to get 100 percentile because I'm two questions off that. So and my strategy for 225 is simple. My strategy is 75, 75, 75 on day one. I know that this is my strategy. I want to score this much in all the three sections, and that's how I am able to do that 225 score. So you have to have that awareness as a student. You have to have that awareness right at the start. Of course, that awareness will get built as you do your mock tests and all. But a basic understanding every student has, right? And I mean, from our side, when we see a student, let's say now let's go into sections. When we talk about let's say QA as a section, we teach students with three objectives. I'm quite sure Mayank sir and Sony sir will also agree. कि एक ऑब्जेक्टिव में हम लोग का रहता है कुछ स्टूडेंट्स के साथ. वी हैव एन ऑब्जेक्टिव विद सम स्टूडेंट्स की गेट टू 30, गेट इनटू 30s. ये कैट में जाए तो ही शुड बी एबल टू सॉल्व 10 क्वेश्चंस आउट ऑफ 34. 30s आ जाएगा तो ही विल गेट हाउ मच, 80 परसेंटाइल प्लस 85 परसेंटाइल
Easy. 85. 85.
85 plus
85, sir.
in a 100 mark exam. And if we can get there, we are good enough. The other strategy is जो people who are normally okay, we try to get them into the 40 to 60 band. This person should be able to go there and be able to solve around 17, 18 questions correct in the exam. This guy should be able to solve 12, 13 questions correct in the exam with maybe 3 errors. This guy is solving 17, 18 questions correct with around 3 errors, 3, 4 errors. And then third logic is for people who are really good, we ask them to focus on getting to this point of the 60 to 80 points score wise. And for that, you need to be able to solve maybe 25 questions correct, around about that, plus minus 2, with maybe 3, 4 errors there. So you are essentially solving 80% of your paper. So even at this level, what we were talking about, you don't need to solve every question. You know 34, and if you are in this range, you'll get what? 60s में तो 99 आ जाएगा आराम से.
आराम से सर, आराम से 99.5.
75, 80 hit
70.
99.8, 99.9 आ जाएगा score.
Right.
So we are basically talking about out of 34 questions, even for this target, 34 में से 25 correct किए, 4 गलत किए, मतलब 29 attempt किए. That's what it is. That's what it is. If you got precision of solving, you can even just attempt 25 all correct, and you are through to this score range, which is you have maxed the exam. वो IIT वाले वो लोग, the IITians and the bits Pilani people, they get these kind of scores. So you can get there if you can get there. And the process. So how do you get there? So you have to first define when you start off. You have to first define. And are you aiming for the 30s in quants? 30s में तुम्हारा मतलब quants के कारण wicket नहीं उड़ेगा. You'll be alive to play the other sections. Are you trying to get 40 to 60? So if it's 40 to 60, then what are your other two? I mean, you also have to look at it in the context of the other two sections and what you want your total score to be. You define that strategy right at the start when you start preparing. And of course, then are you looking at getting to 60 to 80? Because objective just define hoga, तुम्हारा बाकी काम start होता है. So coming back here, I mean, even if your starting objective is 30s, but suppose you are very weak at quants. I have seen people who are very weak at quants go all the way to 60s and maybe even the early of these numbers. It happens. But the strategy will then be if you are, let's say, very poor at quants, you have to make sure that you reach the 30s. मतलब suppose अभी तुम्हारा quant 0 में है, 10s में है, 5 ही क्वेश्चन तुमसे सॉल्व होंगे 1 घंटे में. So your first target will be to reach the 30s, and if you can reach the 30s by somewhere around June, July, which is very possible, then you can then aim for the next. अब 4 महीने क्या करोगे? कुछ तैयारी तो करोगे ना? You'll do something. तो यहाँ पे 30 से 50s का movement possible है. So even those of you who are starting with a 30 target can actually try to get to 50 target there. So how does this boil down into chapters is the next thing I wanted to take this to. So quants mein, if you go with my division of this thing and what we use at Mindworks, block 1, block 2, 3, block 4, block 5, and block 6. These are the 6 blocks. And preparation wise, I think we should divide it into 5 parts. This is the entire arithmetic part. And this is the number systems and progressions part. Your numbers ho gaya, progressions ho gaya. Arithmetic mein pura you get average, alligation, percentage, ratio proportion, time and work, time speed distance, interest, and profit and loss. Block 4 is your geometry, mensuration, and coordinate geometry. Block 5 is functions, inequalities, logs, and equations. And block 6 is permutation, combination, probability, and set theory. Those of you who have my books will know these chapters and this thing. So you have to think about it. On a micro level, you have to think about it as 20 challenges. You have to turn around your thinking in 20 different chapters. On a slightly less micro, on a slightly macro level, you have to think about 5 challenges. कि मेरे को ये ठीक करना है, ये ठीक करना है, ये ठीक करना है, ये ठीक करना और ये ठीक करना है. Right? Now, when you come into any of these chapters, as Sony Goyal sir was talking about, now let's try to merge the perspectives here. As Sony Goyal sir was talking about, there are 3 kinds of questions. One is those typical questions which जो क्वेश्चन सेटर को भी पूछोगे बॉस तुम मेरे को 2 मिनट में करके दिखा सकते हो क्या, और वो नहीं दिखा सकते 2 मिनट में करके, तो उस क्वेश्चन को देयर इज नो राइट फॉर दैट क्वेश्चन टू बी इनसाइड कैट प्रेप, राइट. सो कैट का जो भी है, whatever the cat has the reputation of being very tough, this thing, and I told you even in cat 2018 70% questions were tough, but all those tough questions had a way to solve it in 2 minutes. Every question, all the 34 questions of cat 17, and
right.
in fact last 25 years ka koi bhi cat paper utha lo, every question has been solvable in 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. There has been maybe some questions are easy because there are 4 ways of doing it in 2 minutes. Some other questions are tough because there's only one particular way. If you pick that way, if you can find that way in that under that pressure, then you will be able to get it in 2 minutes. Otherwise it might take 4 to 5 minutes for you to solve. So typically timeline wise, since we are also talking about timelines, etc., could you guys tell me what kind of numbers you want to say? I mean, would you want to put this into weeks or would you want to put it into study sessions? और दूसरा एक क्वेश्चन और कि 15 स्टडी सेशन को स्टूडेंट अगर हफ्ते में कर रहा है, 15 स्टडी सेशन को स्टूडेंट अगर हफ्ते में कर रहा है, तो उस 15 में से कितने क्वांट्स में देने चाहिए? Around 7?
You can have 6, 7.
One study session of 3 hours per day on an average? Mayank sir?
On an average, right, sir. Yeah.
Any points? Mayank sir, you would like to contribute anything?
Sir, I think it is a little on the subjective side. Like I made a huge mistake when I was preparing for CAT, since I also because I had very less time. I started towards the end of July to prepare for CAT, and what happened was that the mock tests had already started. So when I started writing mocks, तो मेरा verbal में बहुत ही कम स्कोर आ रहा था, और quant में क्योंकि मैं already ठीक ठाक था तो उसमें अच्छा था. अब जब मैंने verbal में पढ़ाई ज्यादा शुरू की तो क्वांट से फोकस हट गया और क्वांट में कम स्कोर आने लगा, वर्बल में कम ही रहा. तो मैंने फिर वर्बल बिल्कुल छोड़ दिया. बट आई रियली वांटेड समबडी टू हैव told me to continue studying verbal a little more, so that I may have gotten a little more IIM calls also, rather than just getting IMT Ghaziabad and MDI calls. तो I think किसी का अगर क्वांट, जैसे मैं क्लासेस में देखता हूँ हमारे यहाँ हर तरह के स्टूडेंट्स आते हैं. कुछ ऐसे भी होते हैं जो क्वेश्चन लिखते ही आंसर कर देते हैं, कुछ ऐसे भी होते हैं जो यूनिटरी मेथड पूछ रहे होते हैं कि सर 10 केले 100 रुपए के, तो एक 10 का कैसे हो गया, ये भी समझाना पड़ता है. तो अगर इफ यू आर lying in the latter category, then you need to put in a little more. Okay, joining a coaching or joining a class does not guarantee you unless you also take some initiative. तो आप अगर थोड़ा सा पहले से देख के आएंगे फिर क्लास करेंगे तो बहुत अच्छा रहेगा. And for that you need to put in a little more time in quant. Now suppose you are a math enthusiast and you are already good with numbers and equations and algebra, then I think you should put in a little more time in your vocabulary building and reading and doing more reading comprehension. And तो मेरे ख्याल से वो जो है और इसका ये भी बहुत फर्क पड़ता है कि आप किस टाइम शुरू कर रहे हैं, पढ़ना किस टाइम शुरू कर रहा है. आई थिंक everybody should start early. I know this is the best time to start.
Yeah.
Okay, so that you can get to know, and then you can then put like more time in your weaker area right now for 2-3 months, and then when the test start तो उसके बाद टेस्ट के हिसाब से आप अपना टेस्ट टू टेस्ट अपना स्टडी जो है वो वेरी करें.
हाँ, तो I think one thumb rule you should keep, as I told you right at the start, is 1 chapter per week on an average. उसको एक backbone.
Yes sir, if somebody starts now that would be like really good.
1 chapter per week backbone, although some chapters will take more time. There's for example,
some chapters will take more time, but sir I think you are telling them on an average ना.
Yeah.
जैसे रेशियो प्रोपोर्शन वेरिएशन जो पूरा यूनिट है वो एक हफ्ते में हो जाएगा. टाइम स्पीड डिस्टेंस थोड़ा ज्यादा है तो फिर टाइम एंड वर्क थोड़ा कम भी है.
हाँ,
है ना. तो आप 2 हफ्ते में 2 चैप्टर कर लीजिए वैसे.
4 days में हो सकता है. Number system will take 3
yes.
weeks approximately.
Yes.
2 to 3 weeks लगता
Yes,
है. Yes, Sony sir बताइए. Geometry.
I will try to add 2-3 points here. The first point is what I have observed over years is most of the students, they end up giving maybe 70.
Writing all the number of weeks required that you should require ideally.
Right.
आप continue करिए.
Right, 70% of the time to quant, right? On an average, if you calculate by number of hours total given to CAT preparation, on an average a student ends up giving 60 to 70% of time to quant, and even after that they are not able to score good in overall CAT, because CAT doesn't mean only quant, right? At the same time, when we ask student, you do give time according to this, sir is suggesting six units, this 7 units. What happens is in your verbal you have 2-3 things only. You have RC, you have para jumble, you have para summary, that's it. When we talk about DILR, you have sets. But when we talk about quant, sir has already written 20 plus topics, even though we can put it in blocks. So student he ends up saying, iska bahut zyada syllabus hai, and bahut zyada syllabus we have to give you bahut zyada time. And when Mayank sir was also talking about, when we do ratio proportion, it doesn't mean you reach LOD 3 in the same week. Otherwise you will never be able to finish it, and you will never get satisfaction that your topic is complete. Even after spending 1 week on ratio proportion, you will feel कि यार मेरे को तो ratio proportion आता नहीं है, because you are not able to solve the difficult questions from ratio and proportion. So what happens is in the spirit to master each and every question, you end up giving 70% of your preparation time to quant,
that is where
which is
earlier that I mean, जैसे क्रिकेट में खेलते हैं तो हर बॉल को मारने की जरूरत नहीं होता है, कुछ बॉल छोड़ते भी हो.
हाँ,
तो यहाँ पे भी आपको
छोड़ के
छोड़ना सीखना पड़ेगा, राइट? ना आपको बॉल को मारने की जरूरत है, ना प्रिपरेशन. तो ये टाइम फ्रेम लगाओ. तुम बोलो कि ओके मैं एवरेज एलिगेशन 1 वीक में करना है, and
right,
got let's say LOD 1 to do of averages, LOD1 of allegation कुल मिला के 300 क्वेश्चन है. ठीक है, मेरे से मैं जब एक वीक में उसमें आई एम गोइंग थ्रू इट इन 1 week completely on that chapter when I'm trying to finish that chapter off in 1 week. So I'm aware of the fact that I'll not be able to solve all 300 questions. Maybe I'll be able to do 220 only. It's fine, because what our preparation structure entails at Mindwork specifically, and this is something I have developed over a period of 20 years after having seen so many not just my own cycles of preparation, but so many students, is that there will be a coming back to every chapter. You will come back once you do 3 weeks on number systems. 2 months later, you will come
Right,
back
right.
to it for maybe
Then you come.
there will be a revisit on every chapter, and this is a very important. This revisit can be called as round 2 on every chapter. This is very, very critical. The reason is a simple. Let me give you an analogy. I hope you have taken this down. So I have, this thing, the webinar will also be available on YouTube, so you can watch it later. एक simple logic में बताता हूँ. Suppose this is the ground and you plant a seed here, and the experts whom you have talked to, they say that for the next 3 months this seed requires 100 liters of water. 1 liter, 100 liters of water it requires. इस सीड को 100 लीटर वाटर चाहिए नेक्स्ट 3 months में for it to grow into a healthy tree. So what you do is you say कि okay, मतलब what is the right strategy to give water to this seed. One strategy is कि मैं पहले दिन जाके 100 लीटर डाल दो इसको, बेटा ले लो 100 लीटर, और फिर मैं 3 महीने बाद तुमसे मिलता हूँ. And the other is कि I keep nurturing it with 1 liter every day. So which will work better? इसमें तो सीड मर ही जाएगा ना. तो अगर तुमको let's say you let's say when we saw, now let's look at the numbers again. I put 3 weeks under against number systems. So if you are, let's say, putting around 15 hours a week, 12 to 15 hours a week on out of 30 hours on quants, so I'm talking about 30 to 35 hours of visit on the number system chapter. और फर्स्ट टाइम जब तुम कर रहे हो तो ऑब्वियसली उसके क्लासेस भी देखोगे, तो मे बी 10 to 12 आवर्स का क्लासेस होता है नंबर सिस्टम का. 5-6 क्लास में पढ़ाया जाता है इसको. तो 12 आवर्स का क्लास हुआ तो 20 आवर्स तुम्हारे प्रैक्टिस हुए. And at around an average of 6 minutes per question, you will be able to do maybe 200 questions. तुम उसको थोड़ा सा बढ़ा दो, maybe you want to go to 40 hours, तो 30 hours का तुम्हारा प्रैक्टिस हो गया, तो 300 क्वेश्चन तुमको निकालने हैं फर्स्ट राउंड में. You say कि okay, I'll do LOD1, LOD2 of number systems, and I'll do LOD1 and 2 of number systems. दोनों मिला के 300 questions ही रहेंगे तुम्हारे. और 300 में तुम you are not able to solve all 300, you are able to solve 200 maybe. You are only able to solve 66%. The other 200 questions, you have no idea, you can't think about it. It's fine. Upper limit 10 minutes रखना उसमें. तो when you come back to round 2, you will then redo. I mean, in my view, you should redo all these 300 questions. Because क्या होगा, ये जो 200 क्वेश्चन तुम सॉल्व भी किए हो वो भी तुम याद नहीं रहेगा. 2 महीने बाद अगर राउंड 2 करते हो तो you will need to revise those, and you will also need to think about these 100 questions. And the way your quants learning will go through is कि जब तुमने फर्स्ट राउंड किया, let's say this is your mind, and this is the top of your mind, and this is deep. As you keep going down, it's deeper in your mind. So when you did the first round, thoughts about number systems or that topic started getting planted in your mind. And then when we gave it time, when you gave it some time, these thoughts started going deeper. They started becoming entrenched deeper in your mind. और जब तुम्हारे thoughts यहाँ पे आ गए, तब तुम देखोगे कि जो 100 क्वेश्चन नहीं बना पाए थे, उसमें भी कुछ क्वेश्चन तुमसे खुद बनने लगे. Now what people do instead of this is 200 मेरे से बन गए, 100 वो टीचर के पीछे लग जाते हैं कि मेरे को बता दो. And I think this is the best way to destroy your character. Because if your objective was कि 300 क्वेश्चन याद करने हैं, तब तो ठीक था. मतलब हम लोग क्या बेवकूफ हैं? Are we stupid that we have not recorded 300 questions का solutions, मतलब बहुत simple है ना. If I want to get everybody through the CAT, 300 question उठा लेता हूँ, 300 के solution record कर देता हूँ, देख लो, जाके CAT में solve करो. It don't happen that way. It does not happen that way. So this struggle through with these 100 questions, please don't try to avoid. Because if you do that, अब जैसे when I say number systems is a 3-week chapter, I know that it's around 400 to 500 questions that you have to process in number systems. Percentage chapter में 200 question के आसपास तुमको solve करने पड़ेंगे खुद से. So what you will do in these when you are trying to think about how you want to prepare. So what happens is मतलब suppose तुम ये approach ले लिए कि 200 बन गए मेरे, 300 क्वेश्चन उठाए किसी चैप्टर में because I had said 300 questions. 200 you were able to solve, 100 you are not able to solve. ठीक है, तो you go to someone and go to a doubt clearing class. There are hundreds of people who will tell you doubts on Facebook and everywhere else. You doubt because it's a good business strategy to tell people कि doubts मैं तुमको बता दूंगा तुरंत. So you also say कि हाँ मेरे को doubts बहुत important है मेरे लिए and ऐसा लगता भी on the surface. But see what damage you are doing. The damage you are doing is every question that you get through on your own has an incremental growth. It creates an incremental growth on your skills. तो ये जब 100 क्वेश्चन तुमने खुद से नहीं किया और तुमने किसी से पढ़ लिया, तो ये incremental growth of skills that these 100 questions were supposed to give you, that has not happened. ये हुआ ही नहीं तुमसे. अब तुम CAT का, when you're preparing for CAT, are you preparing for finishing these 300 questions or are you preparing for skill growth? I think we should all agree that it's skill growth. Exam में जब आएगा तो मेरे से solve होना चाहिए. Now when you have compromised this 100 questions as skill growth by asking people and hence you are not grown in those 100 questions as much as you should have, you will need to replace these questions. You'll have to do 100 questions separately. ना इन questions को लाना पड़ेगा नया कहीं से. अब ये question को जब replace करोगे तो कहाँ से replace करोगे? Where will you get the new questions from? So suppose you say कि okay 100 questions I learned from someone, I'll pick up 100 questions from a different book or a different study material. उस 100 questions में से 70 questions यहाँ के आएंगे. So to replace these 100 questions, you'll have to do 300 questions more. उसमें भी guarantee नहीं है कि वो 300 question में, because you don't know whether the other source has given you good quality questions and बहुत सारे books होते हैं और study material होते हैं जिसमें 100 question तो तुमने उठा लिए लेकिन एक ही question 5-5 बार लिखा हुआ है नंबर चेंज करके. राइट, जैसे आर एस अग्रवाल की बुक है उसमें एक ही क्वेश्चन 5-5 बार लिखा हुआ है. मे बी फॉर बैंकिंग एस्पिरेंट्स दैट्स इंपॉर्टेंट बट नॉट फॉर कैट एस्पिरेंट्स. राइट, so the damage you do is irreparable. It's not as easy कि 100 क्वेश्चन मैंने पढ़ लिया किसी से तो अब मैं 100 क्वेश्चन उठा के सॉल्व कर लेता हूँ. It won't work for you. And then the moment you stunt your skill development, your whole preparation is going to this thing. So what I tell people is, and that's why at Mindworks what we tell people is कि let's say there for every chapter there is a watch and there is a do. So percentage chapter has a do of 200 questions. 200 क्वेश्चन में अगर तुम खुद से कर लो और तो तुमको परसेंटेज में अगले 15 साल कैट दे दो कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं होगा. ठीक है, मतलब one off question somewhere. I mean, and the best way to think about अगले 15 साल में कैट में प्रॉब्लम नहीं होगा is to look at the last 15 years. और अगर ये पॉइंट पे तुम आ जाते हो कि पिछले 15 साल के कैट के किसी क्वेश्चन में प्रॉब्लम नहीं हुआ तो अगले 15 साल के प्रॉब्लम कैट में नहीं होगा प्रॉब्लम, बिकॉज क्वेश्चंस आर मोर और लेस सिमिलर. सो देयर इज अ वॉच and there's a do on every chapter. Percentage has a do of 200. Now depending on what kind of student you are, the watch required for you might be different. Now in a physical coaching, when we used to have our center at Connaught Place, the problem with our training systems used to be you had a batch. So if you had a batch, you would schedule percentage for 2 classes maximum. एक क्लास में थियरी हुआ, एक क्लास में प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग हुआ, 20 क्वेश्चन सबको पढ़ा दिया. Now what might happen is if there are 5 people preparing A, B, C, D, for A, 20 questions of teaching is enough for him to then move on to doing the 200 questions himself. But for E, who's very weak at maths, he might need to watch 100 before he starts connecting to the do part. So that's one of the reasons why at Windworks what we do is we have multiple trainers who will come and teach you each of the topics on quants. कि तुम अरुण शर्मा से 20 क्वेश्चंस समझ लो, मयंक सर से 20 क्वेश्चन समझ लो, there are lot of other teachers, सुनील शर्मा से 20 क्वेश्चन समझ लो. We don't want to restrict how many questions we give you availability for watching. But ये do में मैं नहीं घुसूंगा तुम, और तुमको मेरे को घुसाना भी नहीं चाहिए. इस पॉइंट पे you should tell your teachers कि boss, this is my playground and I don't want you to enter this. I'm sorry, I don't want you to enter this because ये करके मेरा काम खत्म हो जाएगा. Because when you're preparing, the preparation is not just to start. You also have to understand when to stop. When to stop in a chapter. So how do you measure that? Percentage मैंने कर लिया, round 1 कर लिया, percentage का round 2 कर लिया मैंने, LOD 1-2 मेरा हो गया, LOD 1, LOD 2 हो गया मेरा, and I'm able to now solve 95% of questions of this. Let's say this is the scenario for you. The best way I think that you should measure at that point is look at the CAT questions of percentage. CAT questions on percentage तुमको 1999 से 2008 देख लो, और 17, 18, 19 देख लो. और इन एग्जाम्स में 9 to 16 मिलेगा नहीं, so don't look for them. इन एग्जाम्स में परसेंटेज में अगर कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं हो रहा है तो परसेंटेज पढ़ना बंद करो प्लीज. स्टॉप स्टडिंग परसेंटेज. यू जस्ट मेंटेन योर लेवल एट दैट लेवल. 17, 18, 19, 20 देख लो. Just maintain your percentage level of solving and ability at that point. Stop reading, stop studying percentage. So to get to that point, I mean that's the best way to this thing. And the other way you work out this is mocks में तुमको दिक्कत हो रहा है क्या? Although mocks में एक problem होता है कि mocks के questions are typically more tougher than CAT questions. So उसको उतना seriously मत लो. mocks में अगर 1-2 question नहीं बन रहे हैं, वो typical question बहुत देते हैं mocks में, तो उसको अगर नहीं कर पा रहे हो तो it's perfectly okay. You focus on what is your reaction to last 20 years of CAT paper. Are you able to solve everything on that chapter, or you still have problems? If you still have problems, you might need a round 3, a round 4, maybe even a round 5 for some chapters. But typically round 1 and round 2 में तुम्हारे आधे chapters तो ठीक हो जाने चाहिए. That's what my thought is. But be ready to go for round 3, round 4, round 5 on some chapters if required. And individual round will keep getting shorter. So for a chapter like percentage, if the first round is 10 to 15 hours of solving, the second round might just be 5 to 7 hours. क्या करोगे 15 घंटे 2 बार second time in percentage? The third round might just be 2-3 hours. The fourth round might be 2 hours only. Fifth round might be 45 minutes. Right? So I remember when I went for my last CAT 18, तो उसमें मैंने ज्योमेट्री पढ़ के गया था बहुत दिन बाद. So I remembered all the formulas and everything. और वो जो 1 घंटा होता है, I think all of you experience that. जब वो बायोमेट्रिक हो जाता है उसके बाद वो आपको बैठा देते हैं कंप्यूटर के सामने, वो आपकी जिंदगी का सबसे बोरिंग आवर होता है. उससे ज्यादा बोरिंग आवर कहीं मिलेगा नहीं आपको. तो मैंने आई हैड नथिंग टू डू. मतलब मेरा बायोमेट्रिक 2 मिनट में हो गया, 45-50 मिनट बचे थे कैट स्टार्ट होने में. So I just put my head down on the table and I revised my whole geometry in 30 minutes in that time. So your round, I did 1 round of geometry just before the CAT, inside the CAT paper, because that's one of the areas I'm always concerned about. So ये part बहुत critical है. Now would you guys like to come in to something on this point? Mayank sir, आप कुछ बोले नहीं बहुत देर से. I would.
सर काफी बोल रहा है, मैं समझ नहीं पा रहा हूँ कि किसके बारे में बोलूं. I definitely want to say something about an area जिसके बारे में बात नहीं हो पाई.
लास्ट में लेंगे 10-15 मिनट बाद. So question.
I have sir a PPT for a small PPT for DILR, 3-4 slides for DILR.
आप कर लीजिए, आप दिखा दीजिए. हाँ मैं सर आप कंप्लीट करिए. हाँ sorry.
Yes sir. I would just like to make a couple of small points. I'll try to make it brief. I talk much, I know. So सबसे पहले तो ये है कि speed versus accuracy के बारे में the people most people have this big fight कि सर हम speed की तरफ जाए या difficult question की तरफ जाए. So a lot of people, since they have this theory of cat level, which I don't understand ever, as I said earlier also. But ठीक है, अगर आपको tough questions के towards बहुत ज़्यादा inclination है, आप जरूर करिए. But please understand that if you only practice tough question, उसके बाद आप कोई भी mock लेकर देखिएगा, you take any practice mock, any unit test, your percentile will go down. Your performance is going to go down definitely. ठीक है, क्योंकि जब आप सिर्फ टफ क्वेश्चन करते हैं तो आपका स्पीड नीचे आ जाता है, और जैसे ही आपका स्पीड आपके हाथ से टाइम निकलने लगता है ना, फिर आपको आपकी खुदा भी आपकी मेहनत आपकी हेल्प नहीं कर सकता एग्जाम के बीच में. सो प्लीज डू प्रैक्टिस स्पीड आल्सो. व्हेन यू आर डूइंग टफ क्वेश्चंस, प्लीज टेक अ टेस्ट every 2-3 days of 10 easy questions and do it under a strict time limit. Point number 1. Point number 2, take a lot of tests. Take self-made tests. जैसे आपने मान लीजिए कि एलिगेशन कर लिया, एवरेज कर लिया, आपने 100 क्वेश्चन लगा लिए, अभी 20-25 क्वेश्चन कहीं किसी और सोर्स से मिले या पुराने कैट के पेपर के ले लिए, अब उसके आप 10-10 क्वेश्चन के मिनी टेस्ट बना लीजिए और उनको आप टाइम लिमिट के अंदर करने की कोशिश करिए. आपको ऐसा पता चलेगा, आपको ये पता चलेगा that only studying and only knowing a lot of concepts and a lot of shortcuts is not enough when you are writing a test. There is hell lot of different more things about yourself that only you have to know, nobody else has to know, and only you can help yourself what happens. तो आपको अपनी सिली मिस्टेक का वर्जन पता चलेगा, आपको बहुत सारी चीजें अपने बारे में पता चलेगी कि आता हुआ क्वेश्चन आपसे क्यों नहीं हुआ. पॉइंट नंबर 3, also please give a lot of time to analyze each test. I'm not only talking about full length test of 3 hours, also unit test. उसमें 3 तरह के analysis होते हैं: quantitative, qualitative and psychological analysis. Quantitative analysis is something that everybody does. ये क्वेश्चन गलत हुआ, ये क्वेश्चन सही हुआ, उसका सॉल्यूशन देख लिया, हो गया, ओके. बट क्वालिटेटिव एंड साइकोलॉजिकल nobody does. साइकोलॉजिकल तो nobody does. क्वालिटेटिव एनालिसिस इज आपने कौन सा क्वेश्चन सेलेक्ट किया, कौन सा नहीं सेलेक्ट किया, उस टाइम पर was your selection good? ओके, इट मे हैपन, जैसे इस बार कैट में क्या हुआ, मैं खुद का बता रहा हूँ, somehow I left out easy questions and I did difficult questions. So since I am a professional for 15 years, I was able to do those questions, but I'm very dissatisfied with my performance this year in CAT. मैंने उसकी जो जितने टाइम मैंने 3 क्वेश्चन किए, मैं 6 और कर सकता था, ठीक है, तो मेरा परसेंटाइल और अच्छा होता, ठीक है. I have nothing to prove or anything but for my own competition, okay. लेकिन आपके लिए तो बहुत बड़ी बात है ना, तो प्लीज डू टेक टेस्ट एंड क्वालिटेटिव एनालिसिस बहुत जरूरी है. आपने कौन सा, आपका सिलेक्शन प्रोसीजर क्या था, आपका डिसीजन मेकिंग कैसा था, वो उसके बारे में सोचिए. एंड थर्ड, व्हाट वाज हैपनिंग, व्हाट वाज गोइंग ऑन इन योर माइंड, व्हाट लेड यू टू मेक मिस्टेक्स, व्हाट मेड यू मेक दोस डिसीजंस. इसके बारे में थोड़ा सोचिए, उसके बारे में क्या हुआ, कैसे हुआ, कौन सी चीज थी जिसने आपका दिमाग खराब किया, वाज इट द टाइमर रनिंग, was it what made it happen, the blackout for you. इसके बारे में थोड़ा साइकोलॉजिकल एनालिसिस करना भी बहुत जरूरी है. वैसे थोड़े मैं इतना ही बता सकता हूं मैं, अभी बार इसके बारे में हम डिटेल सेशन बाद में भी करेंगे. सो आई थिंक द गेम ऑफ क्रैकिंग कैट काइंड ऑफ एग्जाम इज 33%, 35%, 40% थ्योरी एंड 60% इट इज साइकोलॉजी. साइकोलॉजिकल एस्पेक्ट जो है लोग बिल्कुल इग्नोर कर देते हैं, आप प्लीज इग्नोर मत करिए. प्लीज टॉक टू योरसेल्फ, प्लीज इंट्रोस्पेक्ट एवरी नाउ एंड देन व्हाट इज हैपनिंग, why not, etc etc. ये 2-3 पॉइंट्स है which I wanted to make.
Yeah, very nice, very important. Sorry Goyal sir, आप DILR पे कुछ करना चाहते हैं?
Yeah, so I had just tried, jotting down few points for DILR, as the topic was, what can be done in 9 months and what can be a study plan for DILR. So is screen visible to everyone?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah. So what my point was, like, there are 4 things that I will be covering, and this is just 4 slides which I want to cover. First thing is, when we talk about DILR at CAT, it is very different from what your perception may be of DILR. And recently, if we talk about last 4 years, so DILR is not just simply solving data interpretation and solving the logical reasoning puzzles. So that way, you have to understand what DILR at the rate of CAT is. right? It is quite different. For example, you will get questions which need you, which requires you to have understanding of various problems which are being faced by us in day-to-day thing, and those are being faced by people who actually get to do the problem solving. For example, if there is a parking question, if there is a question based on setting up of this scheduling of operations, for example, of burger or pizza or something. So they are not simply what we used to understand, the typical solving your grid based question and your question is done, or getting percentage calculated and your question is done, right? बहुत लोग ये समझ नहीं पाते हैं कि DILR is not about just your basics of this thing. You have to understand how to actually apply that knowledge. Another important fact about CAT DILR is you are given some sets. If I will give you 2 hours, I think everyone can solve those sets, right? But the point is, within those 40 minutes or 1 hour, you have to select a set which you should be doing, and you have to solve that also, right? So what people end up doing is they keep on surfing around all the sets. ये भी कर लेता हूँ, ये भी कर लेता हूँ, ये भी कर लेता हूँ, and end of it, you are not able to do even a single set. और इस बार के CAT में तो you must have seen those who have appeared for this, right? Even if you are able to do one set right sir? So you would be getting 85-90% and with just one set, right? So in DILR, so your focus should be being able to understand it quickly and then solve it, and if you're not able to solve it, leave it quickly. So that is the first part. Second part is the concepts. Usually student asks, sir, what are the concepts we need to prepare in DILR, as there is no defined syllabus, as we have, sir has defined for quantitative aptitude, you can divide it into blocks, but for DILR it becomes really difficult. What should I be preparing? And third, how to develop an approach of problem solving. I think this is the critical point which you need to learn. So you start understanding it as a problem which is given to you as a human being, not as a somebody who is a scholar of maybe data analytics or something like that. It is just how you will be solving a problem given to you. For example, you have different resources and you have to allocate those resources. So you should be able to understand that a problem in a regular day-to-day life concept. Okay. So 9 months. So this is the list of topics, guys. You can take the screenshot also. Broadly, the questions that we get are based on these concepts. I'm not saying you will get a direct question on this, right? But at the same time, the question that you will be getting will be made by mixing, these concepts and layering of these concepts. So probably, as sir has said, so 1 week on each of these weeks is more than enough to clear your concepts on all of these concepts, right? So like we can say critical path, cubes, squares, tournaments, scheduling operations, sequencing. One week I think is more than enough to clear concept part. Let us differentiate it from concepts plus questions. So going to the next slide. So this is one set which was there in the last to last year CAT. So now it looks like a grid based set, but actually it was not a grid based set. Here you were required to use deductive logic also. You were required to use a bit of calculation also, right? So what I call DI based LR and LR based DI, this is what is coming in your examination from last
I would like
4
to
years.
in fact,
Yeah.
I would take back the presentation from you, sir, now, and I would like to add.
Right, sir, right.
Yeah. So just give me a second.
Right, sir, right.
आप कंटिन्यू करिए 2 मिनट, मैं फिर I'll just come.
So this is the sets, guys. This seems like a set of a calculation, but this was actually a set where you need to use a deductive logic. So my point, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So my point was the concept preparation should be separated from the preparation of or your approach to solve a particular set, right?
Okay.
So these two
to what Sony sir was talking about there. So when you talk about LR,
right, sir.
and DI और LR में थोड़ा सा differentiate करना पड़ेगा आप लोग को. While what you said that it's difficult to define portion etc. and DI is mostly true, but LR is still more definable than the DI. And I typically talk about 9 question types in logical reasoning that you need to master as you keep going with your CAT prep. And data interpretation mein you have to split your preparation into 2 parts. One is your what I call as traditional DI, and the other is what I call as your logical DI. So this is the approach I advocate to my students, and this is what I'll just let you know what I mean by all this. So when you talk about logical reasoning mein the 9 topics, the first 5 topics are basically around puzzles. So when you talk about puzzles, you have 5 kinds of puzzles. One is arrangement puzzles, where the theme of the puzzle is on arranging people and things around a straight line or a circle or something like that. You got a ranking puzzle. You have got what can be described as a team formation or a team selection puzzle, and you will see if you go back to the old CAT papers, CAT, IFT, other papers, you will find all these kind of puzzles are replete. There you will find a lot of these inside your exams. And then you have these generic puzzles where it's a mix of all these and generic matching puzzles. And the fifth kind is what Sony sir was talking about, which I call as quantitative reasoning. Now this is where the Venn diagram between logical reasoning and logical DI. When you look at a quantitative reasoning question, it's very similar to a logical DI question. It's sometimes very difficult to place it कि logical DI में डालना चाहिए कि reasoning में डालना चाहिए. But that's not important for you. What is important for you is how do you solve it. And then after this, there are 4 more chapters that you have to focus on. One is set theory and Venn diagrams. Right? And I'll talk about how a quantitative reasoning question is different from a logical DI question. I'll talk about that also for you. One is set theory and Venn diagrams. The second is network diagrams and roots. Each of these requires separate skills. So when you're solving a ranking question, the skill required and the kind of figures you draw and the kind of clues you use is different from an arrangement question. And at the same time, when you're solving a network and root question, the skill you require is different from when you're solving a set theory and a Venn diagram question. They're different skills. And then you have cubes and dice, which is Mayank sir's right down Mayank sir's alley in terms of what he teaches. One of his favorite topics, and I've seen him teaching for the last 15 years, Mayank sir, right from Vajiram times, where we were both teaching cubes and dice, right? And then of course जो एक बात करते हैं ना जो हर टीचर को अपना फ्रीडम दे देता है कि चलो मैंने तो बता दिया था, वो एक मिसलेनियस हो जाएगा. इस मिसलेनियस में बहुत सारे चीज आ सकते हैं. A hybrid question based on some of these, or there can be a question where you have something completely different from what we are talking about here. जैसे 2019 CAT में there was a crypt arithmetic question which had appeared for the first time in CAT. So you have to, and then 2018 CAT में there was a question on you can call it what coding decoding पे question था 2018 CAT.
Coding.
Yeah, so it's
Yes.
actually a mix. So when you start off, what you have to do is, I mean, your target should be around. I mean, when I'm putting targets here, I'm putting the safety margin targets. So you should target to do 50 sets on each of these. Because देखो LR में what are you trying to achieve? Under what circumstances do you get to a point where you are not able to solve an LR question? एक LR question solve क्यों नहीं होता है? उसके 3 ही reasons हैं. Why does an LR question not get solved? One reason, 4 reasons चलो मान लेते हैं. 4 reasons. Why an LR question is not going to get solved? There are 4 reasons for it. One reason for why an LR question is not solved is because you don't understand the language of a clue. You don't understand the language of a clue. That's one reason. The second reason why you will not understand an LR question, the second reason why you will not understand an LR question is you are not able to draw the correct pictures. Every LR question is solved on pictorial frameworks. So you're not able to draw the correct pictures. Your table framework, in these puzzles, you need to draw tables. In set theory and Venn diagrams, you need to draw pictures of the desired type. Cubes and dice is also very pictorial oriented this thing. So if you're not able to draw the correct pictures, you will not be able to solve an LR question. Right? The third kind, the third problem why you can't solve an LR question ever. मतलब तुम्हारा कोई भी LR question solve नहीं हो रहा तो you can trace it back to these four problems. The third problem why you can't solve an LR question will be because you are not able to order the clues. कि किस clue को कब use करना है. And what is the fourth reason? The fourth reason why you can't solve an LR question is that the question is wrong. तो तुमसे solve नहीं हो रहा है. So that means there's no fourth reason. So basically 3 reasons why you can't solve an LR question. Now, if you are a learning individual, तो मेरे को ये बताओ, understand you have a problem. I gave you a clue which was twisted and written in difficult language. And you're seeing that clue for the first time. You're seeing that clue for the first time in your life. You're seeing that kind of language for the first time in your life. तो कितने बार इस language से हारोगे? How many times will you lose to this language? First time, second time भी समझ में नहीं आया, चलो मान सकते हैं. Third time भी समझ में नहीं आया, मान सकते हैं. चौथे बार से तो समझोगे ना उसको. If you are learning individual, you'll sort this out. एक language मतलब, in fact, ideally the second time से तुमको समझ में आना चाहिए. That's the reason why I tell you that if you go through 50 sets of each of these, you will have experienced all the language that would have come in the clues. Because LR का दूसरा factor ये है, if you look at it broadly, अगर मेरे को एक line में बताना है कि LR ठीक कैसे करना है, if I have to tell you in one line, then I'll tell you that how do you get your LR cleared is very simple. Clue usage. If you learn how to use a clue, and if you get good at how to use a clue, your LR is done. Because all these three are clue usage. जो correct pictures draw करोगे, clue से draw करोगे. Ordering the clues भी clue usage का ही बात है. So essentially, when you're developing LR, you're trying to develop. I mean, first you're trying to get used to what is the typical language that is used. Set theory में एक typical language होगा LR में. Networks में एक typical language होगा. Cube dice में एक typical language होगा which will be used. And these kind of puzzles will have a typical language which will be used, and you have to get used to that. And if you do these, मतलब I often tell people कि इतने सेट के बाद अगर तुम्हारा LR ठीक नहीं हुआ तो छोड़ दो, नहीं होने वाला तुम्हारा. There's more than enough. So in fact 50 का जरूरत भी नहीं होगा. शायद 25 sets के बाद what will happen in each of these chapters, and please remember again the same thing will happen. You will see so many questions and you'll be able to do so many questions. In every chapter what will happen is when you see the first 10 sets, suppose तुम quantitative reasoning उठाते हो, तो first 10-20 sets जब उठाओगे तो तुमको हर set नया लगेगा. You will find every set new. But after that you will start seeing that it's just a repetition of what is there, what you have done earlier. एक point आएगा जब तुम next 10 sets उठाओगे तो उसमें से 8+ sets तुम्हारे किए हुए दिखेंगे कि अच्छा ऐसा तो किया हुआ है मैंने. So that's the point where you say that okay, that means I'm done with this kind of sets. That's what you have to do, right? And there's a hierarchy in this. Puzzles is the most important aspect in CAT and LR. And of course, so what Sony Goyal was saying, showing was basically a puzzle set, the language set that he was talking about, and then Venn diagrams has a huge hierarchy in this, in logical reasoning. Venn diagrams is very critical. Now, when you come to data interpretation are two kinds. Data interpretation are two kinds. One is what I call as traditional data interpretation, and the other is what I call as logical data interpretation. Now, first of all, before you start working on DI, and I'll make this quick, जब तुमको कोई भी डेटा दिया जाता है और उससे तुम इंटरप्रेट करते हो तो you come out with information. So DI is basically nothing but the art. If I have to define what DI is the art of taking out information from given data by interpreting it, which is why the section is called DI. Now what a traditional DI set does is that the data itself will be frozen. There will be no analysis required inside the data. Data will be frozen, the variables inside the data will be more or less visible, and all you have to do, the question will seek information from you. The question will seek information from the data, from the given data. Suppose I give a very simple data about, let's say, sales revenue and cost of a company across 5 years. So based on this data, I can ask you about sales revenue, I can ask you about cost, and I can also ask you about something which is not given, which is profit. So the question will seek information, and that information typically will mean that you create a formula, and you extract. I mean, the process of solving will mean basically that what you are doing is extracting the answer. So suppose you create a formula that I need this value, 3 variables. So you basically extract the data from the given this thing, and you just plug it in here and you calculate. This is what a traditional DI question is. Logical DI question, on the other hand, will have a series of steps. So you might be given a data structure or data situation in which there is some missing data, or very common in DI these days is what I call as the multiple possibility situation. So what happens is in logical DI, this thing between the data in front of you and the information that the question is seeking from you, between these two, there is a series of analytical steps that you have to do, series of logical reactions that you have to execute, and these reactions are maybe around 8 to 10 to 12. Normally what I've seen in the CAT is that 8 to 10 to 12 steps करने पड़ते हैं. Now one of the questions people ask me is कि क्या सिर्फ traditional DI करना चाहिए, मतलब सिर्फ logical करना चाहिए? आजकल तो CAT में सिर्फ logical आ रहा है. The answer is no. CAT is still, you will see, for example, the set Sony Goyal sir was showing you before I took over the presentation, that set with triangular graphs. That set I would still rate it to be a traditional DI question. So CAT 2019 में out of 4 DI sets, 2 sets were traditional DI. So you have to, and the other factor is why you should do traditional DI well, and why you should master traditional DI is because without mastering traditional DI, you cannot build your logical DI. Logical DI is built on a strong foundation of traditional DI. It's built on a strong foundation of traditional DI. So build your traditional DI first, and then you move into logical DI. Don't jump to logical DI. जब तक तुम्हारा traditional DI strong नहीं है, तब तक यहाँ नहीं पहुँच पाओगे. And as I said, reasoning में तो you can take that approach, 50-50 sets, chapter wise. मतलब 50 करने की जरूरत भी नहीं है. When you do round 1 of, let's say, arrangements, even if you do 25 sets, that's enough. And keep 25 more sets later for revisit of the chapter. And also when you revisit, you also try to look at the questions which you have not been able to solve. In DI, what you should do is your first 2 months, first 10 weeks, the dominance has to be traditional, and 80% of your work, 80 to 90% of the work that you do has to be traditional DI, 10 to 20% has to be logical DI. And then the next 5-7 weeks, you can move to 50-50. And by this time, मतलब अगर तुम 20-15 sets per week का target रखते हो, तो 12 sets of traditional कर रहे हो every week and 3 sets of logical कर रहे हो every week. तो 120 sets का तुम्हारे यहाँ पे target खत्म हो गया. And then these 5-7 weeks more, you are at around 170 sets of traditional. That's more than enough. उतने में traditional DI नहीं सीखोगे तो कभी नहीं सीखोगे life. right? और यहाँ पे तुमने logical DI फिर करीब 50 सेट कर लिए during the next 7 weeks. And then after that, as you keep going, heading to the next part, we are talking about a 40-week period for your preparation. So after 17, 18 weeks, once you have solidified your traditional DI, you then move to completely, you move to 80, 90% logical, and you are just maintaining traditional. कभी mock test में कुछ दिख गया तो ये कर रहे हो यहाँ पे. So 80, 90% logical. So the next 10, 12 weeks, you have to do maybe around 120, 150 sets of logical. इतने में तुम्हारा DI का काम हो जाना चाहिए. So this should be the target. And for each of these chapters, I mean even the quant chapters or the DILR chapters, when you are going ahead with what you are doing, you have to make sure that you have to understand that once you finish your portion coverage, which all this we were talking about was portion coverage. Once you finish that and you move ahead of from there, so when you move into your mocks and you plan to take around 40 full mocks and 10 section tests, तो 50 टेस्ट में तुमको 200 सेट और मिलेंगे DI के, 200 सेट मिलेंगे LR के, और 50 सेट में 1700 क्वेश्चन मिलेंगे क्वांट्स के, which means on an average 60 to 80 questions per chapter. So this is great. During this phase you cover all these as problem solving experiences also. Mocks में बहुत लोग भूल जाते हैं कि mocks is not just about mock taking, it is also about taking your preparation on every chapter to the next level. और तुमने अगर एवरेज यहाँ पे कोई चैप्टर सपोज टाइम स्पीड डिस्टेंस यहाँ किया है, सेकंड राउंड टाइम स्पीड डिस्टेंस का यहाँ किया है, थर्ड राउंड यहाँ किया है, तो एक नेचुरल फोर्थ राउंड तो यहाँ पे बन ही जाएगा तुम्हारा ना टाइम स्पीड डिस्टेंस का. and this is what you will have to go through in your process. And of course, then parallelly you will also do during this phase of your preparation, you have to make sure that you do all the previous year questions. If you are in a 9-month framework, I would not take any excuses. Your previous year questions to be done has to be 99 to 2008 and 2017 to 20. All of them for CAT. IFT last 10 years questions, and ZAT also last 10 years questions. You have to know every question of these in DI, quants, LR, whatever their areas there are. So this is your preparation outlines, how you should go about it. I think we will do a separate webinar for verbal, because I don't think I can do justice to verbal in the next 2-3 minutes, and I think we are already running out of time. So what we'll do now is we'll take your questions and from all of you, and we'll take we'll talk about this this thing. See, our new batches, Deepika is asking about a new batches. The new batches at Mindworks start on 5th and 20th of the month, every month. And I never tell anybody to join Mindworks. We just say that you consider Mindworks for your CAT prep. I designed the course, I help, and we've got great teachers like the ones you saw today. And it's a group of actually 15-20 teachers who teach along with me. It's not just about Arun Sharma's classes. And you can consider the fact that that we would be able to design a strong program if you are planning a coaching, right? Otherwise, you can follow us on YouTube and all. Also, we'll keep giving good content there also for you. I mean, one of the logics that I always believe कि जो काम करना है अच्छे से करना है. So even if I'm doing something on YouTube, it will not be something which will be watered down version of what we teach in the classes. Yeah, so maybe it might be a little bit less than what we do in the classes, but we'll not be wasting your time in this thing. Okay, yeah, this will be there on YouTube. So questions, Mayank sir, can you also take? Sony sir, आप भी कुछ questions इसमें से लेना चाहेंगे? You can read the questions.
Sir, while you were explaining, I have already answered a lot of people जो भी मेरे उसमें थे. So people were asking about how to study when somebody is so weak at maths, or what to start with LR, or तो मैंने लिखकर already answer कर दिया है since you were explaining them.
हाँ.
So
कोई questions दिख रहे हैं यहाँ पे? Yeah, I think Ved is asking how to schedule revisits. The schedule of revisit should be natural, at least minimum 15-20 day gap between one visit to a chapter and the second round of the chapter. 15 से 45 दिन का gap रहना चाहिए. So let's say you can take one way to do it naturally, so that there's a natural timetable for you. Is suppose you start a chapter like profit and loss on 15th February, and you finish on 20th February. तो एक बेंचमार्क सेट कर दो कि 20 मार्च को तुम उसको फिर से देख लो. तो एक महीने बाद का बेंचमार्क रख दो कि 20 मार्च को तुम उसको रिविजिट कर लोगे, 3-3 घंटे के 2 सेशन दोगे उसमें. ठीक है, between 15 to 20th February you gave 4 sessions of 3 hours, 12 hours, and when you do round 2 of a chapter, it will be typically 40-50% of the time required for round 1, because you're not going to study the theory again, you're not going to study it, I mean you're resolving a lot of the questions, तो उतना time नहीं लगेगा तुमको. ठीक है, okay, so for a GEM student with a CGPA of less than 7, will one get a call from IIM's XLRA? XLRA आ जाएगा, IIM Calcutta भी आ सकता है, IIM Bangalore also you can come, you can have, because मतलब there is a way in which they define their decision about whom to call, etc. The weightages, etc. They don't have anything कि इसको बाहर रखना है मेरे को. You get the admission criteria pretty open. You can work it out and you can find out how much you need, right? Abhinav is asking, is it worth it to skip Vedic maths? No, by Vedic maths I think you're meaning calculations. They're not the same, by the way, but you'll have to develop your calculations. You can't do without calculations. Jerry is asking how many mocks before the exam? Around 30 to 40. Abhishek is asking, when will the recording be available on YouTube? By tonight, tomorrow early.
Right.
Not in
So,
touch. Nah. Yeah, sorry, sir.
Yes, sir, I have to just leave. So I would summarize, my point, and because I read few questions about how a student who is working in an engineering or maybe some other college where 7 or 8 hours go in a college can prepare. So I would advise the same strategy as sir has said, 15 slots. So you can put more slots on the weekend and less slots on your in your weekdays. Plus in engineering you get so many, we call it as free days, when you don't have to study anything, right? Or neither you have a college work. So please make sure you are not getting involved in those activities on those days. Say if you are getting involved in college functions or something like that, so you will not be able to spare time. So that's the answer to your question. So sir, can I leave?
You can also do is if you are pressed for time, and you don't have 15 such sessions, you can do maximum 8 to 10. Then use small 10-minute, 15-minute sessions also. जैसे तुम अगर पांच क्वेश्चन सॉल्व कर रहे हो क्वांट्स का, 15 मिनट टाइम मिल गया तो अच्छा, make it a good study session. Make use of those 15-20 minute time frames. Arun Kumar said SGPA of college matters. Yes, try to get it. If you don't have it, you can live with it. But if you're still in college, try to improve your SGPA. CA, Mohammad Ali Memon is a CA, but CGPA is only 5.8. I'm assuming college CGPA, any chance of getting calls from top AMs? Yeah, you can. ABC शायद मुश्किल होगा, लेकिन नीचे के आ सकते हैं. You'll have to get a high percentile. Non-math student, I used to score 80 to 85 out of 90. कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, non-math भी होती रहा तो you can some people were asking were asking about weak maths or non-maths, etc. There is a way to actually develop your thinking in maths, even if you don't know anything in maths. ठीक है, profile building पे there are a few videos on the YouTube channel, you can watch it. काफी extensively discuss किया हुआ है हम लोग ने. ठीक है, verbal के लिए we'll have a session most probably next week. So we'll announce it on the YouTube channel. Arun Sharma Mindworks, Arun Sharma Academy, the Verbal TeaCup, तीनों को follow कर लो. ठीक है. So all of you asking for verbal, you can wait for that session which we'll have next week most probably. Startup experience, we'll have Meenakshi ma'am, Vanessa also coming in. We'll have 2-3 faculties on verbal who will come in. Startup experience, I'm a founder, PUBG. Yeah, that will count. It'll count, don't worry. Okay. So I think more or less similar questions ही आ रहे हैं.
Yes, sir. And a lot of them I have answered by writing.
Yeah.
Them separate.
हाँ, तो बाकी क्वेश्चन तुम लोग जो आंसर नहीं हुआ उसको तुम लोग ये जब वीडियो आ जाएगा अरुण शर्मा माइंडवर्क्स चैनल पे by tomorrow, you put that down there. We'll try to answer that to the best of our ability there.
Also, we have all these questions recorded anyway, और कुछ questions जो बहुत genuine है उनके ऊपर छोटे-छोटे videos बनाकर भी हम YouTube पर डाल सकते हैं.
हाँ.
So
Yeah.
keep watching that space, and you may get all those answers there very shortly.
Yeah.
Right.
Chalo. Yeah, having your own startup is considered as work and yeah, it is considered. 45 to 50 correct questions out of 100 you're talking about, Avilash. 50 correct questions out of 100 will take you to 96, 97 percentile, depending on how many you get wrong. CAT, most probably Abhijit is asking, is it going to be a 2-hour or 3-hour exam? Nobody knows. We don't have this thing glimpse into the future. But if the COVID thing is okay, I think it will be 3 hours. Cubes and dice के session है क्या YouTube पे? Shruti is asking. We'll try to put something for you on that on YouTube. There. ठीक है? चलो. Internship don't count much. The Mindworks website is www.mindworks.in. That's the website. I'll just put that for you here.
And for the guys whose questions have not been answered per se, do not worry. We have all your questions recorded. Telling you again, we will take each question very seriously and will make it a point to answer that either by writing to you on YouTube or making small videos. Don't worry.
Yeah. Chalo. So we'll stop here. Rohit, initially start with traditional DI. Chapter नहीं होता है DI में. Don't bother about chapters. And Shreyans, it is not impossible for people with work gap to get in Would Be School. You can get through. You have to show what you're doing during that time. Experience does matter, but it is you can get through without experience also. How many marks should an OBC and SC candidate score out of 300 to get calls? OBC का answer different है. OBC needs a 95-96 percentile for ABC. An SC candidate can get it at around 80 percentile also. Chalo. So we'll stop here. Thank you so much. Thanks for being in the session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mayank sir.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sony sir, for being with us.
Thank you.
Anna.
Yeah.
So it was a
Very
pleasure
much.
being with all of you. Bye bye.
Anytime, sir. Bye.
I'm very apologetic to all those people जिनका specific personal questions answer नहीं हो पाया. We tried to answer generically most of the questions. Thank you so much.
Yes.